All right, guys, back with another video. Glad to have y'all with me. We got Dr. Phil debates abortion with pro-life and pro-choice guests. And after this, the doctor that's pro-life on the Dr. Phil show takes some questions from the audience. I'll play that too if we got time. Now, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe while you rock with me watching the video. Now, let's get into it.
To follow.
No one here is pro-death, and no one here is pro-abortion. The difference is pro-choice and pro-life. Lila, you say some things in the predicate of your positions that life begins at fertilization, that science is very clear about that. And you have to know science isn't, there's no consensus among the scientific community.
There is, Dr. Phil. 96%
no, actually,
of
there's
scientists
not.
say that life begins at fertilization. If you're an in vitro specialist, you're looking to create
let me
a
finish.
single cell embryo, and then you know you have a new human life. So it is a scientific fact.
Well, actually, it's not.
When do you say human life begins then?
It doesn't matter what I think. I don't care what I think. What I'm saying is the scientific community does not have a consensus about when life begins.
It's simply inaccurate. It's simply inaccurate.
So, okay, already there's a standoff because she's saying the facts already prove her point, and he's saying that there are no facts to prove his or her point. And I understand the science is a big umbrella information that you could get lost in, but I think we need more scientists, doctors, data gatherers to come together and give the population, give the general people more accurate data and studies, because it's hard to know what to believe when you got, just for example, leftists or doctors or media outlets or journalists that are more on the left saying one thing, and you got people on the right saying another thing. It's hard to come to a general conclusion. You could have two studies saying the opposite things. It's like, how do you know?
Inaccurate.
That's not true. You can go to the body
a single cell embryo is a unique new human life.
You can go to the body of scientific literature, and you can find neuroscientists who say that it begins when there is a detectable brainwave.
But Dr. Phil, in an abortion, if it's not a human life, why do you have to kill it?
I haven't spoken over you, and you keep speaking over me, and I assume that's because you don't want me to finish my thought, which is...
Well, no offense, Dr. Phil, you ain't really saying nothing special or nothing different, so...
You don't want me to finish my thought, which is, if anyone here wants to fact check me instead of speak over me, you can go to the scientific literature and query what the definition is of the beginning of life, and you will find that there are different definitions. And it's up to you to decide what you think, but there is not a consensus among the scientific community.
Yeah, we need more people to come together and agree on certain definitions of things. The same way they got together and agreed that a recession isn't 2 negative quarters of GDP growth. They could get together and decide, when life when life begins.
And it has actually evolved across time. Before we had sonograms, it was a black box what was going on in there. Then when we got to the point we had sonograms and we could see, oh, you can detect a heartbeat. Okay, now, up until then, it was referred to as quickening, when you could feel the kick. That was the beginning of life. And then we got better technology, and then it started to change. But you say it's at fertilization, but at fertilization, there actually hasn't been implantation. And then once there's implantation, then this is a process. And all I'm saying is there's not a consensus. And you're saying there is, and that's factually inaccurate.
We can agree to disagree, but I will say, when I was pregnant.
But the literature doesn't disagree.
Well, we should look it up. It's 96% of scientists have agreed when surveyed. But regardless of that point, I think the question is, we know deep down when you're pregnant, there's a new human life. That's why it's so devastating for Nancy, our miscarriage was so devastating. We all know that deep down. These are human beings. That's why it's so contentious. And listen, we do.
Right. The whole saying that it's not a life, we don't know what it is yet, it's only 2 weeks. That's just there to make people feel better who do it, and it's there to make the people virtue signaling about it feel better as well.
We acknowledge that all humans have human rights, because I think what you're.
I'm sorry to cut her off, but while yes, the baby might the embryo, whatever you want to call it, might not be fully developed. It might not even be breathing. I don't know, but you know what that embryo, what those clump of cells are going to turn into eventually. You know exactly what you're doing. You're killing a human life, or the potential for human life. Give it some time. We know exactly what that clump of cells will turn out to be. It'll turn out to be like me and like everybody else that's walking the earth.
Your question is about
I
is
agree
about
with
personhood.
a lot of your points. I'm just saying it comes down to when that life begins.
But
and
I don't
that's all
think
I'm
Nancy
saying.
or others here are saying
Okay,
they're not
Kristen, go
human beings.
ahead.
Lila, the real argument here we're having is about choice and a person's right to choose what is best
Christian Nunez. This looked like somebody playing blackface. Hey, if it's not, I'm sorry. I just had to
for
point
them.
that out.
What is best for them regarding family planning, what is best for them regarding their bodies and their ownership. And when we are listening to this debate, we're constantly getting it back to about who's deciding what. If you determine for yourself that's when life begins, that is fine for you. But someone else may determine something completely different. And this is where, from a pro-choice standpoint, we're saying it is not for us to decide for anyone what they believe, how they believe, but they have options. So I think we need to really pay attention to what pro-choice is really arguing and what we're really talking about. It's about truly, if we are giving people the right to choose, we're allowing them to make the best decisions for themselves, for their bodies, and for their families.
Do you have a story or a question?
All right, now that's clip 1. Now let's go over here to
Should a
clip
10-year-old
2.
rape survivor be able to get an abortion? Now, pro-choice advocate Christian Nunez says absolutely, yet pro-life advocate Lila Rose says the fetus is not the guilty party. Those are two very strong opinions. I see a lot of my audience wiggling in their chairs. If you've got something to say, raise your hand.
Great, I do. I have lots to say, actually, a ton to say, actually.
Okay.
I would say, though, in this particular case with Nancy, who I feel absolutely terrible for, Lila, I really feel like your views, you just want to legislate evil. That's really how it feels when I hear you speak, especially when you're talking about a 10-year-old girl who was raped. I'm sorry. And to hear you say that, they should just have it anyway is disgusting. I really think you're a traitor to your own, and I will never be able to agree with you. There's nothing you could justify to say that she should have to carry it to bury it. There is nothing you could possibly say to justify that level of lack of empathy. And that's the problem I feel.
I gotta say, shout out to her for even going on the show, man. She is in the lion's den, in the hot seat right now.
I feel like in this country at the moment, we were founded on the lack of empathy, and we've just kept up with that tradition. If you have no empathy.
Abortion is devastating to women's mental health. No one talks about that. The year after a woman has an abortion,
It's really like
the year after a woman
have to have the child. What kind of trauma is
the
that?
trauma
that you're
is from the
inducing on
rape.
somebody?
The trauma is from the rape. The child's an innocent party.
And at the same time, too, I think they should have phrased the question. See, this is the problem. And I guess I play a part in this, right? Because I'm a media outlet, I guess you could say. But a lot of media outlets do things for clicks. They'll put, clickbaits up and clickbait titles and thumbnails, right? Like, so should someone who gets graped, we're gonna call it, have an abortion or not? That's the extreme. Why are we even consulting the audience on an extreme situation? Why? Because that's the most sensitive. You got this girl in the crowd crying, passionate. Now she's about to go off. It's just, let's talk about the rule more so than the exception. I wish we could do that, but sometimes those extremes is just what gets what gets people really going.
There.
The child
we
isn't
don't
born
take out
yet. It's not there.
we should not take out generational sin on a child to say there's generational sin and that dad was an
But here's
abuser,
the
so
thing,
the
we're not
child
even
should be
talking about
killed.
sin at this
That's
rate.
not
We're
fair to the
talking
child.
about rights. And he just
Yes.
said, a right has been taken away from us. And what is next?
I want to address that because our fundamental human right that we all share in this room is life. It's the first human right. Laws are meant to protect the weak. In a society, who's the weakest? Who's the weakest in the society?
The unborn.
A child.
The
They
poorest.
don't have a voice. They can't speak. A child in the room,
poorest. That's
or
who's weak, the
but a poor
poorest.
child
And we're
would
gonna
be the
keep
weakest.
them that way by
and a
making
child
them
with
have to raise
disability.
these
Listen,
kids.
whether you live 10 minutes or 10 years or 100 years, you're a human life, and you have the right to not be killed. And that's what the pro-life fight is all about. That's what we're fighting for, a culture of life where we provide real health care. You know, abortion is the intentional destruction of an innocent
But
human life.
doesn't a
We
woman
can
have
do
a right
better
to
than
choose
that.
that for
A right
herself?
to choose what?
What
A right to choose
doesn't
what?
a woman have
What
a
does an
right
abortion
to
do?
choose what happens to her body?
But what's in her body? There's another
You
life
know-
we're
Yeah, why exactly? The way pro-choice people frame this argument is all about the woman and her choice and her body. They mention nothing about the baby. They even call it like clumps of cells, or I don't know. They just disregard the baby at all. And like she said, who's the most vulnerable? You know, who's the most vulnerable sect or group in this society? It's the unborn. It's children. Only adults, people like her, could really speak up for children, because nobody takes what kids say serious, unless you like a gender affirming therapist or something like that. But
talking about. Let's acknowledge
there's
the science.
And I would defer
Let's acknowledge
to
the
Christian and the experts,
When do you
but I
think
will
human
say
life
this:
begins?
you can't just be pro-fetus and not pro-life,
Right.
We're
because
both.
a lot of
we're
times what we
pro
see.
human beings.
No,
We're
but
pro human beings.
After,
And women
after
deserve
a lot
better
of
than
these
abortion.
children are born, all
deserve
those
better.
legislators who vote for pro-life when the baby's inside the woman, then do nothing to vote to help them
The
with
baby.
Not, I mean,
when the baby's alive, yeah, I knew he was going there.
nothing to vote to help them with
Not- I
health
mean,
care,
we-
after school care, you know,
Yeah, it-
daycare, all these things, especially in marginalized communities.
In the back row, in the middle.
I'm Corinne. You say you're pro-life, but banning abortion hurts so many more people in the long run. So many more people. If you were really pro-life, you would be caring about these long-term ripple effects, about the 10
No, I mean, I got to stop her right there, because all of the babies that would have been born had we not been getting all of these abortions, I think those lives amount to more than the pregnant women who will have complications due to having to get an abortion. You know what I'm saying?
12-year-olds that get raped and they could possibly die because their body isn't developed yet. The babies that come out and could be severe.
Yeah, and I'm sorry to keep pausing, but now again, if this was just a normal conversation of the topic, I would say, why is she going to the extreme? But the whole question was framed on the extreme grape argument, so you got to run with it.
Developed. Me who gets raped, you know, why is it that you're telling me that I can only get an abortion if I get raped? You're telling me that I only get to have a choice over my body if I get violated. How is that fair?
What is troubling me is the idea of government-mandated pregnancy.
can I respond to that?
That's in the
No
end,
one is
that's what's
forcing-
happening.
No one is forcing anyone to get
Forced
pregnant.
motherhood is
Yeah, government mandated pregnancy. That's just insane.
No one is
slavery.
forcing every- Can
No,
I respond
let
to
me-
that?
let-
I
I would
get
like to.
really nervous when the government gets into people's personal lives.
So why was none of these same people so nervous when the cocoa was a thing? Why were none of these people nervous when they were telling us to stay inside? Why were none of these people nervous when they were literally telling us what to put in our bodies? I don't like the hypocrisy.
I've said that.
They're only freedom fighters when it pleases them, not in general.
I've said that when people come in and say, you know, we have problems deciding the custody of our kids, so we're going to go to court. And I go, oh, you don't want to do that. You would be much smarter to sit down and work this out between yourselves, because you have no idea what the court may do or not do. You don't want the government in your lives, and I really don't think the government needs to be telling people what they should do with their bodies. Do you have a story or a question for me? Click the link.
All right, guys. Well, that was the videos, plural, Let me know what you think about that discussion in the comments below. I think that's a tough one. That's a tough one, and she was really handicapped in this argument. She was probably one of maybe 2 or 3 pro-choice people in the whole crowd. With the question that Dr. Phil asked the audience, it was a question revolving around an extreme situation where an abortion would be necessary, but she held her own. You know what I'm saying? And yeah, I appreciate that, and shout out to her for standing strong. Yeah, again, like she said, somebody got to speak up for the unborn and children, because they can't really do it themselves. But don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Let me know what you want to see in the comments next below. Till next time, guys, I'm out of here. Peace.